This podcast is brought to you by Visor.ai and by Again and Forever.
The Final Frontier podcast. These are the voyages of Jake Boger and Justin Spur. Our weekly mission to explore memories of Star Trek's strange new worlds, to recall the search for new life and new civilizations, to boldly go where no one has had the spare time to go before. Welcome, everyone. Welcome back to the Final Frontier. We're staying close to home this episode, but actually we're not on Earth. We're on Starbase 12, isn't it?
I believe it's Starbase 12, yeah.
Yeah.
We're in the cantina from Star Wars.
Starbase 11, not Starbase 12. Oh yeah,
right.
I kind of feel like that scene would have been better with the Star Wars music, but anyway, we'll get there. We are talking about a much more. So, okay, this episode's simultaneously tense and stupid.
It's just there's a lot of Captain Kirk main character syndrome happening in this episode. He's getting kind of Gary Stewed a lot.
Yeah, there's also a lot of ignorance to how everything works. Like everything in this episode. Like they throw every legal standard out the window just to make this episode happen. But that even after all that, I still liked it overall. Like once I
did enjoy it.
I got over. I'm not going to call it silly because silly has a positive connotation. When we got over all the dumb,
there's some dumb. There's
some dumb, but we are of course talking about the episode Court Martial, which is also funny because we had a court martial not that long ago.
Well, okay, I guess we'll get that out of the way because that is a note I had later on. Why is the court martial in this episode so completely different from the court martial in Spock's episode?
Because this one takes place on a starbase. The other one took place on a ship.
Is that really the difference?
I have no earthly idea. That's another thing. Like, there's no precedent here because this would make sense if this was a brand new concept, but I think we've seen it twice before now.
Have we? I only remember the one with Spock. So just my notes on the Paramount Plus description, which is just a reminder. I nailed the guess last week. I get them wrong like every time.
Well, with an episode named Court Martial.
It's hard not to. And then why is Kirk being court-martialed for a crewman death? He lets people die all the time.
This is valid. If we're going with negligent death here,
he lets them die a lot, just a lot.
I mean,
and to be fair, the episode adequately explains why it matters. That's just was my initial thoughts.
Well, I know, but you bring up a good point. There's been a lot of unnecessary deaths, starting with arguably the first episode that Captain Kirk was in.
I'm just saying. Like, really, I can't. I mean, I'm sure. Oh, I mean, when they went down for the Frankenstein, the Lurch guy, some of those deaths felt a little unnecessary. I'm just saying.
Yeah, but true. They had help dying. It wasn't necessarily Kirk's orders.
Also, to be fair, and we're going to get there, but it did kind of feel like it was going to be business as usual on the death until they found out that potentially it all went awry.
Oh, then there was a twist.
And there was a big twist. What a twist!
But this episode takes place between stardates 2947.3 to 2950.1, which you may have noticed. We have gone back in time. Again, not really. I still maintain my headcanon that these episodes were just received out of order when they were transmitted across the space-time continuum.
That makes sense.
Which is why the star dates are helpful. But we are still in the year 2266 in universe, and this episode originally aired on February 2nd, 1967. And this episode was also written by Don M. Mankiewicz and Stephen W. Parabatsos. I hope I pronounced your name right, sir. If not, I apologize. I believe this is the first one where we've had 2 credited writers.
I think so. Yeah, usually it's just one person.
Yeah, which is funny because this is a really basic episode. I was like, really, this one has 2 writers. This one.
It took two guys to crack this one, huh?
Hmm.
Huh.
And directed by Mark Daniels. Mark with a C, so it's fancier. Like Hollywood
Fancier.
Mark.
Hollywood Mark.
Anyway, our story begins with the USS Enterprise at Starbase 11 for repairs after an ion storm. I don't know if this is exclusive to the Paramount Plus upgraded version, but there's just 2 Enterprises orbiting the planet.
Okay, that confused me. I was like, wait, there's more than one ship. Well, I was like, first, because I wanted to go back to the beginning of the episode, but first I was like, why is there 2 Enterprises? Then I was like, wait, is it just another? Because he does mention another ship by name. So I'm like,
Yeah.
is that just another ship? And do all of the ships in the fleet just look identical?
No, so I can't explain this. It's just done somewhat poorly. So the Enterprise is what's known as a Constitution class starship, and Kirk said in a previous episode, I believe it was the Shakespeare one, Conscience of the King. But at some point fairly recently, he said that there are 11 ships like it in the fleet, which means there are currently 11 Constitution class starships in the fleet. And
Gotcha.
typically they are the same. They have different names and numbers, obviously, but they are the same, structure. Basically, kind of like the USS Defiant in Deep Space Nine is a Defiant class starship because presumably the prototype that makes it out of development is so presumably by that, the Constitution class, the first functional Constitution class starship was the USS Constitution.
Gotcha.
And then for all you other fans, I forget what Voyager was. I forget what class that was, but I know that the Enterprise D from Next Generation is a Galaxy class starship.
Oh, okay. Okay, that makes sense.
But anyway, during the storm, Captain Kirk was forced to eject a research pod containing Lieutenant Commander Benjamin Finney to prevent the destruction of the ship. A search party was unable to find Finney. Well, I mean, he was in space.
Yeah, true.
I mean, it's like, here's a search party in space.
Right?
Nope.
Oh, there he is. He's there he is. He's off in the distance.
And he's gone.
Back. Oh. Use those Enterprise windshield
Use
wipers.
those windshield wipers. At the starbase, Commodore Stone, commander of the base, reviews the ship's records and discovers that Kirk ejected the pod while the ship was at yellow alert and not red alert, as Kirk originally claimed. Stone then accuses Kirk of perjury and warns him that he may be subject to a court-martial. So many questions, even at the beginning of this episode.
Okay. I mean, first of all, who doesn't love a good bar graph? I mean, we see I'm loving a good bar graph. Who's hating a good bar graph? Just in reference to the person dying is I know this sounds cold, but for the Enterprise, one casualty feels like an acceptable loss.
So that seems like a pretty even keeled day. Like
right.
There's coffee later if there's only one death.
Right. He really didn't seem all that torn up about the previous crew he had lost. And then when the Jamie, I think is what her name is.
Yeah, Jamie.
She enters. I understand she's in mourning, and I feel bad making fun of her, but that outfit looked terrible.
Oh, you noticed the sailor suit too.
It looked bad.
So here's the funny thing. That looks like something that you would see in an anime convention today. But it was 1967, bro.
My initial note was going to be, what is that Sailor Moon looking outfit? But I wasn't sure if that was
That's
going to be a reference people were going to get.
Not in 1967, they wouldn't have.
No.
You'd have to Marty McFly them. It's like, I guess you're not ready for that yet.
But your kids are going to love it.
Your kids are a certain generation of your kids are going to briefly love it. The franchise isn't going to last all that long.
Well,
but,
to be fair, I mean, it's the reason Sailor Moon wasn't as popular in the States is because 4Kids just killed it. They killed it dead. They killed it dead.
I grew up loving Sailor Moon, but to me, from my childhood, Sailor Moon is girl Dragon Ball Z.
I mean,
like, that's what Sailor Moon is to me.
Even though it's not, but they certainly and I shouldn't even call it Card Captors Sakura. I should call it Card Captors, which is girl Pokemon.
Right. Well, I mean, Card Captors. What's funny? Card Captors in America was really marketed towards boys. Especially with the theme song, but that is very much a girl anime.
Very much so, and believe it or not, the girl version's better. And case in point,
my friend said.
Case in point, the supporting character Lee Shouran in the original, it doesn't come in until what, episode 9-ish?
Something like that. Yeah.
He's in the first episode of the American version.
Yeah, he's barely he's not in it a ton, and he's really the focus of the theme song. But I say, look, that dub will hold a particular place in my heart because, and here's a fun fact for you if you didn't know, the dub is actually Canadian. It's done by a Canadian dubbing group called Nelvana.
Nice. Here's the other thing too. They technically, okay. So here's the thing. His name is Lee Shouran. His family name is Lee.
Right.
So in the American dub, they actually get it right because Asian name convention, the family name comes first. So in the show, he's named Lee Shouran, but they do it like Shouran is his last name.
Yeah, yeah.
And that has always made me laugh so very much.
Well, because I've been learning Japanese, so it's one of those things where I get that now. But yeah, when I was like, when they called him Son Goku, I was like, oh, Goku's first name is Son, and it was like, no, his last name is Son.
Yeah, his family name is Son.
Yeah, like, yeah, what Americans would recognize as a surname.
But yes, we gotta. So on the last episode, you guys didn't see it, but I saw it on Haley's podcast. We're affectionately known as the Problem because we divert a lot. I cut so much out. I cut like 35 minutes out of last week's episode of just complete nonsense that had nothing to do.
I'm trying to be on my best behavior.
I know. But this is also why the other thing that we go through in this podcast is showing you how pop culture connects.
Yeah.
And
6 degrees of Kevin Bacon.
Well, not only that, Star Trek is so influential. We've countless times entire episodes of South Park and Futurama are just Star Trek episodes. But anyway, so going back to the episode, it is never clearly explained why Kirk is under pressure to jettison the pod in the first place. So James Blish, in the original script for Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, he establishes that the pod is directly exposed to the vacuum of space, allowing the instrumentation to take accurate readings. However, its plastic construction picks up radiation from dangerous ionization particularly quickly and must be jettisoned when its contamination begins to pose a threat to the rest of the ship.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's major notes later on are why did he have to jettison this thing? Why did a person have to be in it?
It actually makes sense and I was kind of thinking that I'm like, okay, he's clearly in something to take readings, and when you think about the ship having deflectors and being made out of something that can withstand starlight, you're probably not going to get super, except for the fact that previously and moving forward in the entire franchise, starships are able to get sensor readings.
Well, we'll get there. I have.
I have a whole thing about that now. My caveat to that would be maybe this ion storm is interfering with the instrumentation, so they need to get a little bit closer. That's a maybe, but that would be why. My other question is, why is a Commodore wearing red?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not familiar enough with the structure of this group to really question that. I'm like, I've questioned people wearing red shirts when I thought they shouldn't be before. So I'm like, maybe this is just the color he wears.
Yeah, okay, so basically how it works in Star Trek TOS, the color structure is as follows. Gold is command.
Yes.
Blue is sciences, whether that be medical or other sciences. And operations are red. So that would be things like engineering, communication, techie stuff.
So what should his color be then theoretically?
It should be gold, because if he's first of all, if he's a Commodore, he's already in a command post. Like, it's one thing to be a lieutenant or a commander. You might be head of an operational department. For example, Spock wears blue, Scotty wears red, you know, that kind of stuff. Uhura wears red because she's in an operational department. Now, I think there is some variation there because Sulu, for example, serves as the navigator, but he's probably on a command track, which makes sense because he eventually commands his own starship.
Right. That makes sense.
So yeah, a Commodore wearing red, though, that seems iffy. Yeah. And then funny thing on Kirk's tribunal board, there seems to be a captain wearing blue, and again, that also doesn't make sense.
No, it doesn't. It just kind of seems like it was there to fill out the colors.
Actually, take that back.
Colors.
If he's captaining a medical vessel, then that's
okay. Oh yeah, like a big space ambulance
or a science vessel. To be fair,
or science vessel, or a science vessel. Yeah, that's true. But aren't they all technically science vessels?
Because they make it sound like there are dedicated science vessels, and then there are starships which can serve both exploratory and military uses.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
The other thing I laughed at is that Kirk signs the thing. He signs the paper with an actual pen, and I'm like, okay, they use paper in the year 2267,
right?
But even
Yeah,
funnier, you know what that piece of paper was?
No,
That was a Paramount Desilu talent contract.
that's funny.
The only other thought I have on the Commodore, at least for the moment, is it would be extremely annoying to have a transporter pad in your office.
Right? It'd be so annoying.
That would be awful. That seems like a really. I get why they did it, because Kirk has to beam in and they didn't want to have to build another. Although he could have just walked in a door.
True. You could have just done a scene transition. He walks in the door and we could just fill in the blanks ourselves.
Or we could have done what we did in the Menagerie and they just start in the office.
Yeah, that's also true.
Having the transporter there seems like an unnecessary thing, and I know that if I were Commodore, the first thing I would do is move the transporter pad.
Like, can we have that removed?
Maybe he's one of those like really like open door type management people. He was
that's a really open door management.
That's
person,
real
though.
open. Like he'd be snoozing one day and like, hey, he'd never have an affair. He'd always be way too paranoid to do any funny business in his office.
Right.
Yeah, his boss just beams in on a Friday afternoon.
Whoa!
What are you doing?
It's nap time.
Oh, Admiral.
Right. One question, and this ultimately gets answered in the episode later, was just that did we know this character who had died? They put such emphasis on who this person was. And I'm like, had we met this character before? Find out. No. But it made me feel like I did. Maybe this episode would have meant more.
See, this is
a character I knew.
Yeah, this is another case of if this relationship had been established, like if they made the show today, this relationship would have been a through line narratively,
for sure,
and it would have culminated here, and they would have built up to it.
Yeah, absolutely,
for sure.
He would have shown up in some capacity. Well, it's just out of nowhere. They're like, here's this guy who Kirk has this personal and long established relationship with that just happens to be a random crewman on the Enterprise. Like, yeah, if this were today, then yeah, they'd absolutely he'd be like a walk-on character and like the pilot, and we'd see him very briefly.
And they would acknowledge the relationship at some point, or he would have come in, as a replacement of some kind, blah 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 blah.
Absolutely.
But Commodore Stone first interviews Kirk privately, asking him about his history with Lieutenant Commander Finney. Kirk had served with Finney aboard the USS Republic and reported a mistake Finney had made, causing Finney to be reprimanded and to be sent to the bottom of the promotion list. Ever since that day, Finney has blamed Kirk for hindering his advancement. Stone asks Kirk to voluntarily step down as captain of the Enterprise and to take a ground assignment, but Kirk disputes the allegations and demands a trial.
That's where he's there. He's in the interview and he's got that low cut V-neck, right? And this is like, this feels too casual for a disciplinary hearing. I'm just putting that out there.
Yeah, and it also escalates
it escalates very quickly. Also, so that I think that interview is after this, where they go into the cafeteria or whatever, and you see all the different Starfleet people, and they all I just had a note that is Kirk flirting with that red shirt. Because I don't know, it was giving me there was some sexual tension there. I don't know. They were giving some vibes like maybe there was some Academy experimenting. You know what I mean? Like
there was some. I bet you Finnegan made him do it.
Okay. Have you ever seen Easy A?
Yes.
You know the bit where Stanley Tucci's like, everyone's done it. We've all been to college.
Hey, no judgment. All God's children. It's fine. I was gay once. For a while, no big deal. We all do it. It's okay.
Starfleet is their college. Everyone's been to Starfleet. He went through a phase.
Listen, Starfleet Academy, everybody wears the same uniform.
I'm not judging. It's the future. Everyone loves everyone. I'm just saying there's some tension there.
Very likely. The other thing, too, is during that hearing, though, they keep saying, actually, not just in the hearing, they keep saying over and over again, they're like, computers don't lie. And I'm just like, computers lie all the time because computers only tell you what you tell them to tell you.
That's funny that you say that because I have a note that's literally just computer transcripts definitely lie.
Yes. Well, it's not even that
lie.
It's not even that they lie. It's just that you can go in and change it. Like it's
Right.
not. It's a thing that can be done. Which, to be fair, the idea of a computer in the '60s.
Well, that was a note I had. And that was a question I had for you because you're a more I can see you're a more well-read guy than me.
I wouldn't go that
Is
far, but
his were computers, because the fact that they're using the name computer tells me that they're familiar with computers as a concept, and what they believe computers can do is makes sense. So I'm like, I know personal computers wasn't really till the Macintosh, I believe, in the 1980s with Steve Jobs.
correct. But I guess what you would consider, I mean, business computers, but sort of like because they've been using computers since certainly by the '50s. They were ubiquitous in
Were
sort of
they?
well, military and
Oh,
not
interesting.
necessarily even the
Was that
business
when they
world,
were
but
like room
whole rooms.
size?
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
but
Okay.
yeah, but the thing is, the concept of a computer in the '60s, it's that's what I'm saying. Their idea of future computers might suggest that they were infallible, but certainly by 1960 standards, computers just did what you programmed them to do.
Well,
So if you wanted a computer to lie, all you would have to do is tell it to lie to you.
I think I said this maybe in the pilot or one of our past episodes, where my point of reference for what speculative future is always two things. It's the Jetsons and Star Trek. Um, and the Jetsons, they had similar ideas of what computers could do, and they had, I would say, I mean, I don't know if artificial intelligence as a concept was sort of around in the 60s, but they had computers that had intelligence. Like Rosie, for example, is an
Yeah, I mean
artificially intelligent being.
robots. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
and what
speaking of the Jetsons, I read somewhere on social media that George Jetson turned 3 years old this year.
yeah, I saw that as well. Yeah. Congratulations, George Jetson. We are not in the future you were.
You will have been a television star.
Right? You will have been a show in the 1960s. But yeah, so that was my question is because I always refer to when in regards to the internet, that magical time in the 90s where we thought computers could do anything. So like that episode of the Magic School Bus where they go inside the computer, or Freakazoid if you're a fan of 90s animation, where it's like the internet is a magical place where anything can happen. I was just kind of wondering if that's like the idea of computers in the 1960s, is computers can do anything.
I mean, theoretically, yes. That's what I'm saying. That's my point. Is a
Yeah,
computer will do what you tell it to do.
right. But I guess my question is, like, in the 1960s, was their idea of computer? Maybe you already said this. They're infallible. They're never wrong. Like, did they think of computers that way? Because certainly the text shows that.
Yeah, but even Star Trek doesn't think about that because there are computers that go awry all the time. But
Right.
we'll get there. We'll get there. Before the trial begins, an old friend of Kirk's has a drink with him at the bar. During their conversations, she recommends a good lawyer to represent Kirk at his court martial. But when he asks her why she cannot represent him, she reveals that she is the prosecuting attorney for his trial. This is the point where I went, hang on, I'll buy the computer thing, but okay, I'll just read my notes because I wrote out like a short paragraph. This woman should recuse herself immediately. In fact, she never should have taken the job. But not only is she a former girlfriend of the defendant, but she talked to him about the trial beforehand. Assuming Federation law still contains constitutional rights, several of Kirk's are violated right here, not to mention the ethical concerns. She should have never been selected as prosecutor in the first place. Assuming she wouldn't be disbarred for this, she should at least be removed from this.
Okay, so I
Like,
have a bunch of notes about her and this scene, but just a question that popped into my head as you were saying that was, maybe this shows my ignorance about court martialing as like as a punitive force or whatever. Does court martialing operate the same way as, like, because I'm going to be honest with you, the only my window into your legal system is literally Law and Order. So like that's my rough understanding of how your law system works.
there, I'm not an expert. There are some differences because military law is a bit different. Like, for example,
Yeah.
I found this out thanks to Legal Eagle on YouTube. Um, so apparently, you can, depending on the circumstances, it's my understanding that you can be brought up on a court martial for adultery in the military,
Oh,
whereas that is not a legal crime in civilian life. So there's more things you can be brought up on. I know the rules are a little bit different, but
The process is generally the same,
somewhat like there's some minor differences in military tribunals and court martials.
I know one. The I'm not. I don't think I've ever actually seen the movie. I've just seen the scene. A Few Good Men. Like, is it like that?
That's a court martial, yes.
Okay, so yeah, it's okay. So this is not really, because my point was going to be maybe the rules are different in terms of a prosecuting and attorney.
So it's funny. They're different, but when you get into like the nitty-gritty details, but generally speaking, it's my understanding that they're basically the same.
Okay,
There are more rules in a court martial, and there might be instances where like everybody has constitutional rights, but some of those are kind of more, it's my understanding that they're a little bit more
um,
enhanced.
okay, when that woman first gets introduced, there's a really funny moment where Bones clocks her and just is like instantly there. He's like, "Hello, who are you? I'm
Yeah.
the doctor."
Bones was kind of like one step away from being like, Leonard McCoy, do you want to play doctor?
Right, right. I got a princess dress.
It was a funny hat if you're feeling squirrely.
You just know he's got it in his closet. Hey, I'm not judging. We're not judging. We're
I
not
mean,
here to judge.
I am a little bit because there's an episode of The Big Bang Theory where the girls all play hooky and go to Disneyland, and
Yeah,
then
yeah,
and then
that's
at the
funny.
end they all come back and presumably get down with their boyfriends, but they're all still in their Disney princess garb. And I'm watching the scene and I'm like, now listen, I'm not here to shame anyone, but
I'm
this
not here to shame.
this feels icky.
Right? Yeah. No. Yeah. No. Yeah. No. I get it. It does. Yeah. Not my thing. Stuff
It's
associated with children. It's just
I think that's what it is for me. I think that's what it is at the end of the day. So there's another like again, the synopsis is kind of sparse because not a lot happens in this episode.
no. Yeah.
But
No.
like Kirk meets his lawyer, but the one thing, and I only bring this up because I'm going to touch on it, the absurdity of Kirk's lawyer first, like in 2025, because it's 2025 now, the absurdity of a lawyer refusing to use a computer in lieu of old books
Right?
would
It's
make me
absurd in our
run,
day.
like it would make me run away. So not that he has books, mind you, but the fact that he refuses to use a computer
Right?
which has all those books in it, plus the entirety of human knowledge.
That'd be like a guy being like, "I only use the rotary phone," and you're like,
No,
"Oh, okay."
that would be like a physicist only using an abacus.
Yes, that's even
Can
better. Yes. Yes. You're right.
can he do it? Maybe.
I mean, sure. Yeah. I mean, I suppose
I
it's
doubt
really
it.
inefficient, though.
Really doubt it.
Right?
But yeah.
Very,
But he
very
says
inefficient.
the thing that really irked me, because this is how my brain works, is he cites things like the Magna Carta, Moses, and I'm like, because he's citing laws that were written, right?
Yeah.
When he's talking to Kirk, because he does it again in the courtroom, but a little bit different. He cites documents, but he cites laws, law writers. And he says Moses. I'm like, Moses didn't write the laws, though. He transcribed them, but technically,
God wrote the laws.
yeah, God wrote the laws, and Moses put them on the tablets.
God is the author. Moses is more like a ghostwriter.
Not even because Ghostwriter actually writes it, and then you pay the ghostwriter to write. No, Moses would be a transcriber at best.
That is true. I mean, technically he did. I mean, didn't he like chisel them into the? I'm not.
Yeah, yeah.
I've
But
only ever seen it in the card.
he's transcribing what God's saying, so he's
I
doing
mean,
the whole.
he got paid in God's love
Which I'm sorry,
and retribution.
Hebrew goes right to left, not left to right. My bad. Sorry for all the Hebrew speaking people that are offended by that.
Right, I was dancing around. I was like, oh, I can make so many bad jokes about the Moses story. I'm not gonna do it. But in regards to your comment that not much happens in this episode, you're right. But as a lover of monologues, like really good monologues, Kirk's got some good monologues in this episode. Like the one that we already passed, where he's doing his little interview and he's doing the monologue about his backstory with the guy who died. That was good. I enjoyed that. I enjoyed stuff like that. So like as an older, I could see how if you were a kid, this episode might be kind of boring. But like as an adult, I like the slower parts. Like I enjoyed that. So
yeah, and then the whole time Kirk's going on about that, and throughout the episode, everybody's like, "Well, don't you believe there'd be animosity?" And I'm like, Yeah, maybe, but are we forgetting about the fact that this guy screwed up and almost blew up the starship, and Kirk saved the starship from getting blown up and is
Right?
obligated to report it?
Right?
Like,
Right?
why would anyone be angry with Kirk? Because even if you're the guy who screwed up, you still had to screw up for all that to happen.
Right? And I guess the point of contention being that he he killed this guy, but yeah, I don't. He still did everything right. So procedurally, it sounds like
Yeah,
on paper.
Kirk has done nothing wrong in this entire episode, and this is a rarity because Kirk screws up a lot.
He's a chronic screw up.
Yeah,
It's kind of what he does,
like for somebody that takes regulations as suggestions and not
right?
rules, he's on them. I mean, he's by the book in this episode. But
Right?
yeah, I just had to point out that Moses did not write the law. You know who else does everything by the book? This sponsor.
Stop wasting your time on manually editing your videos. The secret AI tool will do the work for you. One of the best things about it is that it gives your video the potential to go viral. Visit this page, sign in, create a project by clicking on this button. Choose a video that you want to use. Click on the AI clip button. Wait for the magic. It is scanning through the video and looking for the parts that has the potential to go viral. Instead of editing the video by yourself, it does the work for you. It even generates headline and captions which fit your video. Another surprise is that they generate video description or social post for you to use. Once done, click Export to Post.
At Kirk's court-martial, both Spock and Dr. McCoy defend Kirk's character, but testify to the facts that Kirk had reason to resent Finney and that it is impossible for the ship's computer log to be wrong. Bad synopsis. That is not what happened.
That is not what
Not
happened.
really. Now, I will say, in terms of the legal proceedings, this was pathetic. Like,
Right?
neither of the attorneys should be attorneys. Like, this is a farce.
After you did cross-examine the first witness, I'd be like, "You're fired."
I mean, yeah, it's like this doesn't make any sense. He's literally like, no questions, and at no point is Kirk like,
What?
why not?
Fucking what? No.
What? What?
um, I mean, okay, just yeah. We've already mentioned why is the court martial process completely different for Kirk. They're all wearing special shirts. I assume that was a formality thing. Why does Spock and Kirk have a serial number, but the one girl doesn't?
That doesn't make sense.
Like I thought it was an identification thing, but
It
then they
is.
read out her record, but she didn't have a serial number, which I'm guessing you
Well,
didn't notice.
clearly it's no, I didn't, but clearly it's because she's a woman.
I thought it was I thought it was a rank thing, but McCoy also doesn't have a serial number.
The editor got bored with it, I guess. I don't
I
know.
guess. I also in terms of McCoy, because you mentioned McCoy, I always get fascinated by stupid minor details. So hearing his record was very interesting. Finding out that he's a lieutenant commander, that's his rank, and his position on the ship is chief surgeon. I would have
Yes.
figured it was chief medical officer.
It's technically the same thing.
Is it technically the same
Yeah.
thing? Oh, okay, interesting.
So
Okay,
it's kind of like the at a hospital, chief of medicine is
okay,
the head of the. So
okay,
yeah, chief
interesting.
surgeon, chief medical officer, same. I
So
would say same difference.
I was trying to work out. So as lieutenant commander, where does that put him like next to Kirk? Is he just below Kirk?
No, so here's another thing this episode gets wrong. It gets Spock and Finney's ranks wrong, actually,
Oh, interesting.
because Spock and Finney both have commander stripes. Which okay, so look at your sleeve real quick. Okay, so you technically have commander stripes. You have the two stripes, and then the captain has the
Oh, the third
think
stripe.
well the dots in the middle.
Oh, okay, okay.
So a lieutenant commander would have one stripe and the dots.
Oh, okay, okay. That
And then
makes sense.
and then a lieutenant has just the stripe. And then
Oh, okay.
an ensign has the uniform but no stripes.
Okay, okay, okay. That makes sense.
But you'll notice that Spock and oh, spoiler alert, and Finney, when you see him, they have commander stripes. But when Spock is introduced in the court martial, he's identified as lieutenant commander, and that is not accurate. McCoy's rank is lieutenant commander.
Oh, okay. Okay. So is that
So
like well below captain?
no, it's only 2 steps below.
Only two
It
steps
it would
below.
go
Oh,
it would
okay.
so basically, at least in Star Trek the original series, it goes as far as officers: ensign, lieutenant, and I later I think they break it down into like lieutenant junior grade, but basically it's ensign, lieutenant commander, commander, captain.
Gotcha. Okay. 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 So then Spock would be commander then.
Spock would be a commander, yes.
Got it. Okay. Okay. That makes sense.
And now I will, because I had to fact check this. While it is common, extremely common for first officers to have the rank of commander, it is not a rule. Like a lieutenant commander can be a
Okay.
first officer. It's just that typically, if you're an XO, and the Orville gets this right too because it's
Yeah.
Commander Kelly Grayson.
Right. I mean, that makes sense because the second in command is on its way to being in command, right? So it just makes sense.
Yeah, now what I think, so it's funny because I think they get Spock's rank wrong and they get Finney's uniform wrong because it would not make sense for Finney to be a commander if he was put at the bottom of the promotion list.
I believe they call him Lieutenant Commander.
They do, but
Yeah,
his
yeah.
rank stripes are, which also don't make
Oh,
sense because Kirk was talking about how he was a lieutenant when the incident happened. So
right.
if he went down to the bottom of the promotion list, even if he wasn't demoted outright, I mean, well, I guess some time has passed, but I mean, his career couldn't have been held back too much if he's already a commander again.
Right, right,
I
right.
mean, he
Yeah,
might he might resent the fact that Kirk surpassed him in rank because Kirk was an ensign at the time, but
right. But
I
also, if
mean,
he's a commander, it just kind of feels like yeah, in terms of like, oh, he's on the way they interpreted the decision to put him in the pod, it's just he was the next on the chore list. Um,
basically, yeah.
so it's like, well, if he's on the chore list, then surely his rank can't have all that much meaning.
Well, but that's just it. So they get, I that's what I mean. I think his uniform is wrong because I could see him being a lieutenant commander,
Yeah, I
but
guess like the commander doesn't seem like the type of rank to get grunt work. I'm gonna use the PG word.
well, I wouldn't call it grunt work either, but
I don't know, that was the vibe. That, I mean, to be fair, maybe I'm misunderstanding, but that was kind of the vibe that Kirk was just like, I just treat him like he was a regular schlub,
I just treat him like a regular guy. Do my bidding, Eon.
right?
Hasn't.
Right. Go to the pod. Peon, that's the PG word. We're trying to keep this show PG, folks.
Oh, well, if you're a fan of normal doors, the door through which Spock and McCoy enter the courtroom is one of the few hinged doors we see in the entire series. This also marks the only appearance of the female Starfleet dress uniform during the original series run, worn by Lieutenant Ariel Shaw, which is Kirk's old flame, who talks to him like oh my god, I still can't get over that because she shouldn't even talk to him.
Right. Well,
Like
no, to be fair to her, the scene seems to indicate that Kirk sought her out. So she didn't go looking for him. He went looking for her because
I
I
mean
think it
maybe,
was
but
he
still,
heard that Bones was talking to her. But still, you're right. She should have been like at the start of the conversation, like, I can't talk to you. Don't be flirting with Kirk.
Yeah, I
No
can't
Kirk
talk to
flirting,
you. I can't talk to you without your lawyer present.
right? You're gonna need a lawyer.
The key differences between this uniform and the standard female uniform are the satin-like sheen and the gold braid on the edge of the collar, and a slightly longer skirt because we're formal
Oh,
here.
well, that makes sense.
Which I mean, that makes sense considering the
Isn't a
standard.
slightly longer skirt just a dress?
No, not necessarily.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
Although
I'm not down with fashion.
to be fair, isn't okay. Now we're female viewers. Correct us on this. Isn't the female Star Trek Starfleet uniform technically a dress because it's not it's a one piece thing? Isn't that technically a dress?
What is it? What is the difference between a dress and a skirt? Man, my male brain is showing.
I always thought a skirt was a standalone piece of clothing.
I was identified a skirt by its length. Like a skirt is shorter than a dress.
No, because you can have a short cocktail dress for sure.
Oh yeah. Oh, I guess that's true. That is true. I don't know. I don't know. I'm not familiar
And
with female. I'm barely
and
familiar with male clothing.
and technically, I still maintain that it's not a skirt; it's a skirt.
That is true. Yeah. Once you pointed that out, I was like, okay, yeah, that's fair. It does have.
It's
It's
a
more of a
covered
skirt.
it's a covered skirt.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
That concludes
Avoid any.
that
That
can,
includes the fashion portion of the show.
yeah, that concludes the fashion portion of the Final Frontier. Tune in next week when we talk about color palettes.
hey, we are a wide-ranging and very topic show, okay? You'll learn a
We
little
are.
bit of everything.
And we also went over in an earlier episode why the uniform colors are what they are.
It's true. You'll learn a
Yeah.
little something every episode. Or you
You
see
do.
funny edits.
I mean, let's be real, both. So, but speaking of stupid things that make no sense, so the hand thingy when they're on the
I
stand.
assume that was meant to approximate the notion of the Bible, putting your hand on the Bible.
Oh, see, I totally thought it was a lie detector. So,
No, that's what I mean, I guess, yeah. Or
okay,
a lie detector also makes sense.
okay, but here's the thing. Here's the
Guide
thing.
for morality, maybe.
Now, here's the thing that doesn't make sense. Assuming that this thing is a lie detector, which would make sense because you have to put your hand on it, and it probably takes biometric readings as you're testifying. If they have the thing that tells you if you're lying, and we've already established, thanks to Harcourt, Fenton, Mudd, that the computer can already tell if someone's lying without the hand thingy.
Right.
Just put Kirk on the stand and ask him.
Right.
If he's
Right.
knowingly lying, then it will register. And
Theoretically,
it notably doesn't during his testimony.
oh, well, yeah, but also to be fair, the computer is supposed to be off this episode. That's supposed to be the idea.
I mean, but yeah, I get it, but the whole thing is if their whole point is that the computer can't lie, and this thing is hooked up to a computer, and Spock hasn't proved that wrong yet. So, which again, I understand that if we followed logic here, there would be no episode, and this would have
Right.
been this would have been something they were talking about in the next episode, where Kirk would have been like, "How about that court martial, huh? That was close."
Right. Right.
Except not at
It's
all because
Real
I
House of
totally
Cards
passed the
episode.
lie detector.
He would have because he's not lying.
Yeah. The other dumb thing that happens there's a lot of dumb things that happen in the courtroom scene. The other one is Spock says the computer is wrong, and then the prosecuting attorney says, "So you're disputing the computer log?" And Spock says, "No, I'm not. It's just wrong." And I'm like, "That then you are. That's
You're disputing it.
this doesn't make any sense." And thankfully, everyone else in the room seems as lost as I was because I'm like, "No, saying it's wrong is disputing what it says." Spock,
Right.
you're a Vulcan. Maybe this was
Right.
like a Vulcan mind trick.
I mean, his reasoning was kind of like he's like, it's not, or I'm not. I don't remember what he says, but it's something like, yeah, his logic was weird. It was like, very strange.
It wasn't logic. It was not. And then the other thing, this was hilarious. At several points, I think Spock and McCoy's testimony, they both say that Captain Kirk could not act out of malice. Captain Kirk can absolutely act out of malice. We've seen it
Sure.
before. We've seen it before several times up till now. The Pursuit of the Gorn ship.
True.
Anytime Finnegan is on screen,
Absolutely. I mean, his
Co-
entire want was he wanted to beat up Finnegan. That was
Yeah.
his dream.
Kodos, which to be fair, he kept it together, but I mean there was malice there for sure.
There was absolutely malice there.
And I'm sure there's things I'm thinking of that I'm missing. And then this isn't even mentioning, which I'm not, because it's unfair to bring this up because it technically hasn't happened yet, but Kirk's, future disdain for the entire Klingon race.
True. That is
you
true.
know. So
He
Kirk
is
can
capable of
absolutely capable of it. He's good at it.
Right. So it's funny. So when she brings up space psychology, I have a note that says I was about to say space psychology mockingly and incredulously, but then she explained it. She explained what space psychology was, and I was like, you know what? It's an explanation. I'll accept
You know
it.
what? I'll take it. I'll take it. The funny thing was, I was actually thinking about this episode is essentially Gaslight
Yeah, right?
because there's even a moment where Kirk doubts his,
Yeah, they
not
absolutely
so
gaslight him.
not so much his sanity, but his memory for sure.
Yeah, there's a moment where it's like, yeah, this episode is like, yeah, again, an example of gaslighting. Yeah, I have a note about that later.
Yeah, so that was fun. The one thing I want to know, and I don't know this, I forget her name because I don't mean this to sound bad, but it's a character we've never seen before. The female officer that gives testimony.
Oh yes. The Asian girl.
Yes, and when
Yes.
she leaves the stand, she mouths something to Captain Kirk, and I couldn't make it out what it was.
Oh, I didn't. Yeah, I didn't.
But
Catch
I
it
was
either.
I was just like, that seems That seems inappropriate to do in a court martial.
Right? Editor Jake will have to go back and comb the footage in super slow motion and
No,
try
let's
to
think.
lip read.
What are some of the things she could have said? Sorry.
Uh,
I mean, I'm sure it was something
I'm
to the effect of like
sorry.
sorry, but it's like
Yeah,
I like to think it was sorry. Are we still meeting up later?
right. I'd just be like, science lab.
But yeah, I was like,
Always in the science lab.
science lab. It's always in the science lab. Also, she had very contemporary eyebrow makeup done.
She did actually, yeah.
That's like straight up Kardashian eyebrow makeup,
Right?
which I was just looking at it. I'm like, this seems very so clearly the style of today has just come back around.
I mean, that's usually how it works. It
Yeah.
always does.
Bell bottoms were back for a minute. I don't think they
They
still
were.
are, but they were.
I mean, my thing was when I was a kid, vinyl, no one had heard of vinyl. No one my age when I was a kid had heard of vinyl. Like my dad raised me on vinyl. And then out of nowhere, vinyl came back. And I had like people who were like 17, 18-year-olds who I worked with who would be like, have you heard of this thing called vinyl? And I was like, yeah, I grew up with records. Like, yeah, yes, obviously I have. It's like, it's
Yes.
so good. It's so clean. It's so crisp. I'm like, what is
No,
happening?
No, it's not.
Yeah, I have a friend who swears by it.
So this is, I'm probably going to get some hate in the comments for this, but okay, it's not clearer. It's a fact. Digital sound is clearer than analog sound because it is perfectly duplicated. So unless your speakers suck, you are hearing a digitally perfect copy of the song that was originally recorded and mixed. Whereas with vinyl, it
Not a
can
sound guy. I will not disagree with you.
well, no, okay. It's the same reason why we have digital broadcasts today. They switched over to digital because analog waves of any kind, whether they be audio or visual, they decay the longer they
That is
go.
true.
So it's just not true. Now, you might feel like you perceive a superior quality, but you don't. You might prefer it, but it is not superior. So Finney's daughter Jamie looks on as Kirk's trial continues. Samuel T. Cogley, Kirk's attorney, puts him on the stand, but again, Kirk's testimony contradicts the computer logs, which include a visual recording that shows Kirk ejecting the pod while the ship was at yellow alert. During a recess, Kirk tells Spock that he might be able to beat his next captain at chess, giving Spock an idea.
Chess.
Yeah. Okay. So, just that's convenient video footage. And then they explained why he was in the pod. I understood why he was in the pod, and I noticed that Sulu wasn't there. And I'm just saying that if Sulu wasn't there, that guy wouldn't have died. That's all I'm saying.
Sulu or Scotty were not in this episode at all.
No, and if either of them or both of them were there, that guy wouldn't have died.
The other thing I noticed is that seems like an extremely specific command to have like on the command panel on the captain's chair. You have red alert, yellow alert. I get those. Presumably a communication button, but a specific button to eject an observation pod.
That does seem odd. Also,
that seems like a really specific.
That seems incredibly specific. And just in regards to the footage itself, do they not have doctored footage in the Star Trek future?
Well, they clearly do because of what happened.
Prior to this moment, I mean, did they not have doctored footage in the...
That's, again, Justin, you're thinking too much.
You're using too much of that logic.
The episode needs this to be the way it is.
Right?
Damn you and all your questions.
But
the other thing that so every time up to this point that the ship has gone to red alert, Kirk has had to say it, presumably, right? And I think I've seen Sulu push the button actually. So, but again, the button needs to be there, and you would think this is a horrendously bad design, just begging for an accident to happen. If the captain can just if he puts his elbow the wrong way, somebody dies.
Oh no!
And we made a joke in the last episode about how if somebody spilled coffee,
right? No! There goes there goes Benjamin. Oh, I liked him. Oh no.
To quote Tim Allen. Oh, I was about to say, you know what would have been funny is Tim Allen in Star Trek, but we got that.
Never give up. Never surrender.
Oh, shut up.
We did get Tim out in Star Trek, and then we already mentioned this, but just I'm gonna note that's Kirk is being gaslit so hard.
He really is.
The moment of him being like, "Huh, yeah, that didn't happen like that."
But Mr. Spock discovers that he is able to beat the Enterprise computer several times at three-dimensional chess, despite having given the computer all his knowledge of the game. He concludes that the computer has been tampered with, as his best outcome should have been a draw. Spock arrives with his findings before the court-martial verdict can be handed down, and Cogley makes an impassioned speech on the rights of man versus the machine.
So just them going to deliver this sensitive information, they had time to get changed.
And Cogley demands that the court reconvene aboard the Enterprise. Once there, Spock notes only 3 people could have altered the computer records aboard the ship: Kirk, himself, and Finney. Cogley suggests that Finney is not dead, which, once again in Star Trek, where once Spock is done explaining it, if you haven't figured it out yet, which, I mean,
Right?
it's somewhat obvious pretty early on. But that being said, once Spock lays this out, it becomes obvious what the implication is, but the lawyer has to say it.
Right. Well, okay. So, I already mentioned they took the time to get changed during a moment which seemed time sensitive. And then I have a note was, when did this become Perry Mason? Is that a contemporary reference to either the 1960s or now? And
I don't know.
When the daughter shows up and is like, "I'm so sorry about being a dick to you earlier." I had a note that said, that seems suspicious. So there was a moment where I thought that maybe the daughter was framing.
See,
was framing her.
for a minute, yeah, but then and that's something I really didn't care for in the episode. I was like, this is not how a normal person would act, I don't think.
Right? And even, well, I think he's like, when Spock shows up at the beginning of the episode and he's like, okay, I've got the thing, but and then the guy snatches it out of his hand. There seems to be, and this is a moment with the daughter where they seem to imply that Spock like has additional information that he just never reveals. Like,
Right.
something happened that we never find out what delayed him in delivering that record. Even though he seems to imply that something happened that delayed him, but he never says what it is. So he always seems to know that something is up.
Right. Yeah. Well, it would stand to reason that Spock, because there is a thing, and this is why we still have character witnesses to this day. There is a thing. There's precedent for, something being perceived as true, but then if you know the nature of the person, it becomes very, very hard to believe if you know them. And Spock
Yeah.
is probably like, I mean, yeah, the computer says that, but I also know Jim Kirk, and in the many years that I've served with him, he's never been so careless. So
Right.
even if it did happen this way, there's something else in all likelihood that's happening here.
But I did enjoy. I mean, yes, you mentioned how it becomes obvious. I've got the note that it sure looks like Finney faked his death to frame Kirk.
Yeah, because it becomes pretty obvious because not only is he presumably dead, but they also there's no trace of him.
Right. But I love when the reveal happens and Kirk just is like, "Holy," like just that look of like, why didn't I think of that like 15 minutes ago? This is very funny.
Yeah, it is kind of funny, which I have a note that touches on this, so I'll just go into it. It is kind of funny, like you pointed out, that no one, not even their first inclination, but nobody ever thought that, like, is this maybe fake?
Right. It's just the fact that Kirk was so, I don't know what you would call it, arrogant, eccentric, to be like, I'm so likable that there's no possible way that this man would hold resentment over me, even though he works underneath me. Like, it's just the fact that never occurred to him as an option.
There is some precedent to that because I'm victim, not in the same way. Like, I've never jettisoned a pod in space and been like, I don't know why he was mad at me, but no, I am guilty of this as to assuming that other people will hold themselves to the same standard of, say, integrity as I will, and then they don't, and then it's like, probably should have seen that one coming. But I don't know, when you assume the world is a good place, people will disappoint you.
Yeah, fair enough. No, yeah, that's fair.
And professional courtesy and things like that. Like yeah, I'm guilty of that. I've wizened up a bit
Yeah.
in my age, but like yeah, in my early 20s, you just assume people will do the right thing, and they very rarely do. But in this episode, the computer's recreation shows Captain Kirk pressing a button on his armrest that should jettison the pod while the alert status was still yellow, which would be a violation of procedure, as the jettison button should only be pressed when the alert is red. So first of all, the jettison button shouldn't even be functional until the red alert button is pushed.
Right?
So that's how you stop that from happening. But going forward, it's later discovered that the computer records had been tampered with by Finney, who was an expert in computer systems and had manipulated the evidence to frame Kirk. This moment is noteworthy as it reflects an early depiction of the potential for AI and computer systems to be used in legal proceedings, as well as the possibility of such systems being manipulated or hacked, which is funny because any of you who watched the Kyle Rittenhouse trial, because my mind went there immediately because there was a moment, which I'm not surprised if you haven't, because most people actually didn't watch that trial. I watched it every day, and
No, yeah, I'm familiar with it now.
there was a moment in the trial where the prosecution presents video evidence, but then the defense very intelligently, because they had not seen that particular video before,
Mhm.
or now I can't remember, so don't quote me. They'd either never seen it before, or there was something about it, like something was now legible that wasn't legible before, or
Right.
something was clearer. So anyway, the defense basically said, hang on, where did this come from? And then somebody was like, oh well, it's on a thumb drive. How did it get on that thumb drive? And a lot of people were making fun of this by saying that, oh well, it's the same video. But here's the thing: in the most legal sense of the word, no, it is not, because compression happens.
Hmm.
And then they actually the prosecution, I'd have to go back and watch it for the specifics, but basically they did run it through software,
Yeah.
and it's
Interesting.
like, and it actually got, the judge ruled in favor of the defense on this because, since they couldn't, we actually, like, it was very surreal where in an actual courtroom they're talking about like whether or not like a pinch and magnify manipulates a
Yeah.
video or not. And it's like, well, actually, yes, it does, just not
Yeah.
permanently. But if even when you transfer a file or run it through a certain program, it can sometimes compress it differently, which can, and some of these compression models. So, for example, MPEG 2 kind of does the opposite of what this does, but especially today. So, what MPEG 2's codec would do is, as you go through frame by frame of the video file, if the
Yeah.
pixels didn't change, it just deleted them to save on
Huh.
the size of the image file. So like
Yeah.
if you're doing something on like a green screen background, all the green, those are the same pixels.
Huh.
If it stays green and nothing happens, those are the
Yeah.
exact same pixels. And that saves a
Interesting.
tremendous amount of video space. The problem is if there's the tiniest bit of data in those pixels
Yeah.
that the computer just assumes is the same background, it gets erased.
Right.
And then nowadays we have things where you can like enhance footage and you actually add pixels to change the
Yeah.
resolution of an image. Now, when a computer generates pixels, those are not real. And with AI generated files, it makes its best guess. So if you were enhancing footage and say there was a clock
Yeah.
that was illegible in the original footage and the computer makes its best guess, that may not be the accurate time.
Gotcha.
It probably is, but you can't say for certain if you can't see it in the original file
So it becomes disputable.
immediately, because it is no
Yeah, that
longer
makes
the
sense.
original file. So
Right.
that's where my mind went on this, and I don't remember exactly what it. The argument was that in the original video file that the defense had in evidence, something is not clear enough to be distinguishable.
Right.
Whereas in this footage, they were arguing that since they're arguing that it is clear in this video file, well, then this clearly happened due to compression
Yeah.
or some sort of software. And it was so stupid. Like the prosecution in that case was so dumb. They made so many stupid mistakes. Like you cannot send video evidence to each other via email. Like you
No.
can't do that. Like,
No, you can't. That's bad.
yeah, so actually, if you go back and watch that, there's a few moments where the judge just reams the prosecution. because they were very bad in that case.
I seem to recall hearing something about that.
After most of the crew is beamed down to Starbase 11, Dr. McCoy uses a sensitive auditory device tied into the computer that can detect a human heartbeat aboard the ship and masks out those of all known to remain aboard. One heartbeat remains, coming from engineering. So there's so many problems with this. First of all,
I mean,
we've concluded that the computer cannot be trusted in this case.
I was just going to say that. I mean, I just have a note that just says this seems unnecessarily elaborate. Couldn't they just like scan the ship?
No, that's my note is they can scan for life signs on a planet while they're in orbit, but they can't scan an empty ship.
Right? Yeah. Right? Yeah, that was my question.
And they can scan. They've done it before. That you can scan other ships.
Also, I don't understand. So why the threat of crashing the ship? Why was that part of it necessary? I thought it was going to be to scare out the guy out of hiding by being like, the ship's going to crash. We all need to escape. But then they did the scanning thing, and I'm like, but why did they need to evacuate everybody? That part seems unnecessary.
Well, they needed to evacuate people because they needed to be able to zero out the heart rates. But this was a very contrived, like overly. This was done for drama. That's what it was. But
It sure seems that way.
I'm just over here thinking, I'm like, oh, this could have been a 10-minute episode.
I mean, yeah, it could have.
Because okay, you got the lie detector, but even if you had to, like, okay, Kirk passed the lie detector, so maybe Finney's on board the ship. Let's scan it. Get everybody off. Oh,
Right.
there's totally a life sign hiding in this exact location in engineering. Let's beam him out and put him in handcuffs because this is a thing we can do in Star Trek.
Right. I didn't even think about that part of it.
Okay, that's the other thing. Why does Kirk have to go look for him?
By himself. He's like, I need to do this by myself.
Just beam him out.
Right? Like they generally know where he is. They got the one guy in the transporter room. Yeah, that's a very good point.
The Commodore has a transporter pad in his office. Just
that's
do it
also
there.
True.
You can just arrest him.
Right? Have like 5 guys with guns on him.
Yeah, like a security team.
Kind of makes this next section feel really unnecessary.
Yeah, it was. But you know what is necessary?
The sponsor?
Checking out this sponsor, which you don't have to hunt for because we're giving it to you right now.
Breaking news, Charles Manson, the infamous cult leader who led a string of murders in the 1960s.
Kirk goes to engineering to find Finney, who draws a phaser and informs him that he has sabotaged the ship so she will drop out of orbit, killing everyone aboard. Why?
Yeah, he just went homicidal for like I just don't understand.
Because you didn't get a promotion, dude?
Also, like, what was his end game? Was he just gonna hide out in the Enterprise till he died? Was he eventually gonna reveal himself? Like, what was the plan here?
So you're just gonna jump out at the end and be like, "Ah, it was me." And then Kirk could have just been like, "You gaslit me," and then they die.
And then they die, right? And like, what? I mean, was he not? I just don't. Was he just gonna? I mean, Kirk gets court-martialed, and then what? Did he sabotage it after they went back and he realized the gig was up?
That actually might have been it. That makes sense.
Because like, otherwise, I'm like, it just kind of seems like, why did he want to kill everyone else on the ship when Kirk was being court-martialed? That didn't make any sense.
I'm actually going to go with that. I'm going to go with Finney figured out the jig was up.
It's gotta be.
The jig was up. The noose is out, and they finally found him.
Right. Solid Kirk Fu, by the way.
Kirk reveals that Finney's daughter Jamie is also aboard, confusing him and giving Kirk time to wrestle the weapon away. I love how they use the word wrestle, and that's very apropos.
Right.
After Finney is secured, Kirk repairs the damage and saves the ship once again.
That scene was very funny of him crawling through the thing. I'm like, that's where I was like, this is getting real main character syndrome-y, where Kirk is just capable of fixing everything and he's the hero. And I just was like,
Well, and once again, Kirk's like, I'm gonna go look for him instead of doing the intelligent thing and having the super strong Vulcan and a security team come with me, so that if we find this deranged man, we can disarm
but
him.
If they did that, then Kirk and the strange man, who look oddly similar in height and hair color, have a fight where they're indistinguishable from each other. We wouldn't have that. You wouldn't be able to be like, which one's Kirk?
Yeah, and then Kirk wouldn't have been able to rip his shirt again.
And also, ever since you pointed out in an edit that moment where Kirk does, where the guy does the throw and it's clearly not William Shatner, every time it cut to his stunt double, I noticed it instantly.
I mean, okay, here's the thing about the stunt double to get for him. He's like at least 15 years older, or at least he looks it.
And I think in this one it's particularly bad because both of them switch stunt doubles. Like there's one moment where it's two completely different guys. Like at one point, it's very funny.
After all this is done, Captain Kirk is obviously cleared of all charges and restored to duty, and the Enterprise is repaired, and they go on their merry way to have more adventures.
I mean, you forgot to mention his weird 1960s kiss. It's a weird 1960s kiss. And then the end of the episode, once again, Star Trek sitcom comes back. And I love how Spock, the little moment between him, Spock, and McCoy.
She's a very good lawyer. Obviously. Indeed, she is.
Whereas, like, she was a good lawyer, and it was a real missed opportunity to have him go. She was a real good lawyer. She's good with her mouth. Kissing
on the bridge.
She's good with her mouth. She's good with that. She's good with her tongue. Oh, that felt gross.
Yeah, there's some. He's not a good lawyer.
Not a good lawyer. Well, I was gonna call him a Kentucky Fried Lawyer, but Kirk's lawyer, he did an excellent job.
He didn't do anything.
He figured out that the computer was wrong.
Spock figured out the computer was wrong. The lawyer was just like, "Oh yes, evidence. Let's use this."
But the lawyer seemed to be the one to figure out that he was alive, because when they're on the Enterprise, he seemed to already be like, "Yeah, he's clearly faked his death. The computer is wrong. You must acquit.
If the computer log is incorrectly writ, you must acquit."
If the computer log is not a fit, you must acquit.
If the computer log misses a bit, you must acquit.
Oh, I like that one. That was good. Honestly, I know we made fun of the mystery, but it wasn't terrible.
I had to remind myself that again, it's a trope now.
Right.
Maybe in 1967 it wasn't so.
And I did think the scene where the daughter comes in, that was a solid misdirect. Like she was giving me I feel guilty for doing something vibe. So I'm like, it was a decent misdirect. But I will say,
I just couldn't get over the lawyer being so incredibly just. I'm not even going to say unprofessional, just unethical. Like
right? I mean, I will say that his performance at the end was really quite good. Finn's performance, he was quite good, but it was unearned. Like it was just like he wasn't in the episode enough to establish a fall from grace that they wanted me to care about.
Yeah, and is it just me, or does Kirk seem to have something against the Irish?
Sure, or people that way.
Or people that surnames start with the letter F.
Certainly, he has conflict with them. Although, I mean, he didn't. He was just doing his job.
I mean, but to be fair, they got conflict with everyone. That sounded more like Scotty.
Hey, man, snitches careers get stitches.
No, snitches don't get stitches.
Snitches don't get promotions
because they don't get promotions. Actually, technically, I was going to say technically they do because Kirk got more stitches.
Yeah, he got more stitches because he was a snitch.
So snitches do get stitches.
That's it. Snitches get stitches. There we go.
Join us next week when we watch the episode Return of the Archons. As per our tradition, Justin, would you like to take a stab at what is going to happen in Return of the Archons?
Return of the Archons. See, the Archons to me connotate like nobility. But at the same time, you know what? I think it's gonna be the return of otherworldly beings from another dimension who Kirk has previously encountered, but we, the audience, have never experienced them before. And he has to once again stop them from terrorizing the universe.
No.
No. That felt too wild of a swing.
I mean, it's kind of a vague title. So, see, if you were a smart aleck like me, you would have said, well, the Archons come back. Yeah.
I mean, I was my brain went like Arcanites. I was gonna do like a Greek thing.
Anywho, join us next week for Return of the Archons, but until then, watch long and prosper.
And subscribe.
And like. We need more. Actually, that's the thing. We need more likes from you guys because you guys are watching us and we appreciate that. But if you like the show, give it a like. Tell YouTube that you want more. And then we'll spread to more people like space herpes.
From Space Vegas.
Yes. No, that's Star Wars. Star Wars has Space Vegas.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
From the Pleasure Planet.
From the Pleasure Planet. We'll spread like space herpes from the Pleasure Planet.
Cue the credits. This appears to be the first appearance of, and correct me if I'm wrong, the Prime Directive.
My note says, holy crap, it's the Purge.
Are you guys conspiring? No, buddy. No, we're not. Yeah, blah, blah, whatever.